steps. Yes. And you get your website just like that. Just like that. The second you type in www.yahoo.com and hit enter, this is what's happening in the background. Now, as a network person, because this is nice to know, guess what you're going to be dealing with? Layer 2, Layer 3, and Layer 4. People like to say sometimes Layer 4, but trust me, you're going to be working at Layer 4. There are some things at Layer 4 you might not be too much into, but you're concerned with port numbers. Really. You really are. But not as much as a firewall guy. Now, firewall will spend a lot of time here on Layer 4. Allowing ports to come in, denying ports, shutting down ports, traffic that's coming in on one port, make sure it goes out on the same port, things like that. But this information up here, you're not really concerned with. There's other folks that deal with this. You're not concerned with it at all. So, us as network folks, in our world, we deal with the network layer, the data link layer, and what's the other one? Transport layer. Now, just when you thought that you knew everything about the OSI model, now we talk about the TCP model. I'm not going to go really deep into the TCP/IP model because it's still a model, guys. I mean, it's still the same thing, except the fact that the TCP/IP model is just a different type of model. It just, look at it. If we compare it to the OSI model, let's take a look at that. Look how the application is really the application of the OSI model and the presentation in the session. Look at that. So the application, the presentation, and session is now just one layer in the TCP/IP model that is called the application. But this is still present. This still has to be done. The presentation still has to be done. The session still has to be done. It's just wrapped up into one. Now the TCP/IP model says, look, that's really the job of the application. So we're going to leave it at that. Okay? Now, as you look over here, you can see here's my IP layers. It says application and session. And as you can see here, this session of this IP model deals with the session and the transport. But over here, this model has a transport of the OSI model, and it deals with TCP and UDP. It has a transport model as well. And notice that this network layer over here, they call it Internet Protocol, which is IP, data link, physical, and physical. When we look over here, we kind of just have the application, the session, which deals with the session in the network, and the app in the network that deals with the network, data link, and physical. We got different type of models out there. We got some old ones and we got some newer ones. You can follow what's in the book, but the bottom line is it's not going to change how the data moves regardless. When you start understanding how the data moves from a perspective, you're not going to keep going back to the OSI model in that fashion and say, okay, let's check the OSI model. No, you're going to be paying attention to layer 3 and layer 2 in a different fashion. But the OSI model is a necessity to learn these things. So let's take a look at this one. Now, we got the OSI model still here: application, presentation, session, transport, network, data link, physical. I use the OSI model to learn this, and I've used the OSI model for teaching. But again, it's just a model. Here, you can see we have an application layer, transport layer, internet layer, and network interface layer. So different types of models. Now, TCP/IP is nothing more than a suite of protocols. A suite of protocols. What's a protocol? A set of rules. As you can see at the application, TCP will have HTTP, FTP, DNS, SNMP, SMTP. So these are applications that come with TCP/IP. You have TCP/IP installed, most likely you're going to have these programs. It's a suite of protocol. Even RIP. And yes, you have RIP on your Windows machines. You have to go in there and install it. It'll say RIP listener. And you can actually send network routes over to your PCs, which is really awesome. In our TCP suite, you can see our transport will deal with TCP and UDP. Look at our internet layer. We got some interesting things there. ICMP, IP version 4, IP version 6, ARP. And then our network layer, we have Ethernet, which, what did I tell you? Ethernet is a standard, right? Set of rules on how to communicate over certain types of media and between devices. Wireless. Oh, I didn't know I can run Ethernet over wireless. Well, yeah, you are. And in that wireless, you have a thing called CCNA, where here on the physical LAN, you have CCNA, what you're going to learn what this one is, except this says collision detection, this says avoidance. And we have another layer 2 technology here, which is called frame relay. So these are just models, guys. That's all they are. They're just models. If you start to get too confused on this, just understand that you might be thinking about this too much. The most important thing to understand is really trying to memorize what each one of these does. And if you utilize the information, like the name of the layer, it should be helpful. Application, that means a user is sitting here using the application. Presentation, this means how do we want to present the data to our neighbor, to the person we're sending the data to. Session, this is creating logical sessions or logical connections between each other. Transport's going to be your biggest one. That's the one that's you're going to have some problems starting off. Eventually you'll get it. And when I mean eventually, I don't mean it's going to take you a long time. It's just, you'll learn it. And let's say 3 months down the road, you can't remember it. That's fine. You know, it's just part of it. We forget things all the time. You know, you ask me what the port number of of Telnet is. Sometimes I say 22. And the people on the phone are just like, you sure about that? I have to think Telnet. Oh, no, I'm sorry, it's 23. I know it's 23. I know DNS is 53. I know TFTP is 69. But you forget. Your brain has lapse, you know? It just forgets. The network layer, you remember this is IP addresses. Data link layer, this is MAC addresses. So when I tell you that I'm dealing with layer 2, this is layer 2 traffic. That means I am forwarding my data based on MAC addresses. Oh, this is layer 3 information. Oh, that means I'm forwarding my data using IP addresses. Now let's say that one more time. Data link layer, layer 2. That means I'm making forwarding decisions based on the MAC addresses and where they sit and how my table is built. Layer 3 means I'm using the IP addresses as my forwarding decisions based on the table that I have telling me what interface to go out of. Okay? So these two do the exact same thing. They use a table to make forwarding decisions, except layer 3 uses IP addresses, layer 2 uses MAC addresses. Can't get any simpler than that, right? So that's pretty much it with this lesson as far as chapter 2 is concerned, which is the OSI model.